We made it to the end of another week. But my goodness, the news is what the news is. We want to begin where we always begin, and that is with Israel and Gaza and the fragile peace. We need to understand that all these declarations of the cessation of war hang in the balance. A lot more work has to be done. We know that Israel has claimed that Hamas has broken the terms by failing to return the bodies of some of the dead hostages. Of course, that's going to be difficult to do within this such a short period of time, given the ruin and rubble that has been made of Gaza. We know that they've refused, that is, Israel has refused to open up Rafah so that aid can get into Gaza. So there's still collective punishment happening here. So let's keep our eyes on this tenuous peace. Keep our eyes on what Netanyahu and the Likud party is saying. Keep our eyes on what Hamas is doing. Let's condemn the violence across the board. And let's pray. Let's pray that peace can come to the region. But let's not be naive about the actors involved. Of course, that takes us to the Trump administration and of course, their role in what we have been talking about in terms of Israel and Gaza for a while now. But I want to focus our attention just for a quick second on the extrajudicial killings taking place off the coast of Venezuela. We had the administration bomb another boat. That's 27 lives killed, murdered by the United States. No due process. They could be wrong. Even Rand Paul called the administration out in terms of its failure to follow due process. The administration has also authorized the CIA to engage in lethal operations within Venezuela. They've made it explicit. And it seems to me that this should be an outcry. There should be just people screaming at the top of their lungs about the United States engaging in such illegal behavior. This does not fall within the parameters of international law. It breaks international law. And the U.S. is a rogue actor in this regard. And so we see Trump not giving a damn about international law. He thinks that the United States can do whatever it wants to do in light of his own interest in so many ways. So keep an eye out on that. And of course, you combine that with just simply grift and corruption. You know, people are in the New York Times and the Washington Post and posted, have written articles about the dinner that Trump just had at the White House and how pay to play and all of this stuff is going on. These people are lining their pockets in the midst of destroying the country. It's absolutely insane. And on top of the corruption, there's also the retribution list. Trump was explicit in meeting with Bondi and Kash Patel that he wants other folks to go. He wants them to go after some other folks, not just Comey, not just Letitia James, but also Adam Schiff and Jack Smith and Andrew Wiseman and the like. This is absolutely unprecedented. And what's so striking about it, at least for me, is the way in which we have normalized this kind of behavior. We report it, and the reporting is this is just another instance of Trump being Trump. We report it, this is just another example of the administration exceeding executive power, extending executive power in ways that many find unconstitutional. It's almost as if people have just become used to this. They have reconciled themselves to the fact that the Trump administration will behave in this way. But we know he has his hit list. We now know that my colleague, Andrew Wiseman, is on that list. I mentioned him explicitly. I had to jump back on to talk about John Bolton's indictment. I'm home now. As you can see, I got a different library behind me. I'm not a Bolton fan. I don't agree with his idea of U.S. power across the globe. But it doesn't follow from that disagreement that I'm excited about this indictment. Of course not. Not a fan of James Comey. I'm generally skeptical. My son is a public defender. He's predisposed against prosecutors in certain ways. But I just want to be very, very clear. Donald Trump is going after his perceived enemies. He has a hit list. And the aim is to instill fear, to hush criticism, to be the strong man that he desires to be. The DOJ, they're functioning like his lawyers, not our lawyers. And, I've marveled for the last 8 months how people have allowed this man to do what he's doing. How folk have folk who are supposedly committed to democracy, folk who pay attention to what's happening in the Beltway, right? How they've stood by in certain ways and allowed him to do this. Well, now he has demonstrated very clearly with the indictment of Comey, with the indictment of Letitia James, and now the indictment of Bolton, what he's capable of doing and what he will do. It's a matter of the rule of law. He's undermining the American justice system right now, in full view and in real time. We have to wait and see, I suppose, how this will play out. But my God, these people are attacking the pillars of American democracy, and they're doing it every single day. Wow, we got a lot of work to do ahead of us. We got a lot of work ahead of us. Got a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. Because if this country is going to be saved, it's going to have to be us. We see that he's actually executing it. I want to keep our attention, and this is just, I want to shift for a moment from Trump to something more specific. And that is, to my mind, the all-out assault on Black America. The all-out assault on Black America. I've said over and over again on this platform and in other places that we need to understand that in addition to the greed and the grift, in addition to the corruption, that this is a white nationalist administration. That this is a white nationalist administration motivated in part by fears around the Great Replacement. I think, and I've said it before, that the immigration policy is driven by Great Replacement. I've made it clear that ICE has become the largest federal law enforcement agency for one reason, and that is to make America white again. MAWA, to make America white again. And we see, and I put in the links, a report by the Blackout Report, listing the all-out assault, over 15,000 attacks on Black progress in 8 months. Over 15,000 attacks on Black progress in 8 months. I want you to take a look at that report, go through it, comb through it, and see the scale of the assault. So he has a retribution list. He has a hit list. Letitia James is on that list. The government is shut down. He's still sicking the Department of Justice on his perceived enemies. He is attacking Letitia James, this Black woman, for buying a damn house. For buying a damn house. And even former New Jersey Governor Christie gave us a sense of the amount that's at stake here. Right? Attacking Black women, Lisa Cook, Fani Willis, Letitia James in this instance, right? We have to keep our eye on what he's doing. Look at the atmosphere. The atmosphere created. Think about, how can I put this? Think about those racist remarks in the group chat of young Republicans. I put in the link, the report by Politico, right? You look at what they're saying, how they're orienting themselves, talking about showers and I love Hitler and using the N word over and over again. Racial animus drives these folks. And it's not about the groups who are the object of that bigotry. It's not simply about the groups who are the object of their paranoia. It is the conception, the idea of whiteness that's motivating the policies. I've said, and I'll continue to say it over and over again, that America has a divided soul. It imagines itself at once as a beacon of freedom and as a white republic. We have an administration, we have actors, right, intent on, right, securing the idea that America is not a nation of laws, that America is more than an idea, that America is white at its core. It must remain so. And it must remain so. I mean, J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, defended those young people. And he was trying to imply that folk were going to cancel them, that they were going to ruin these young people's lives. Some of these folk are state senators, over 21. It's amazing how bad actors, when they're white, can become kids. How bad actors, when they're white, can become kids, can become children, and invoke a certain kind of empathy. And, how quickly people can't recognize that certain other folk are children and how they want to punish them as adults. Children zip-tied in Chicago as ICE raids. Right. Black communities and brown communities and the like. Children arrested. Children crying as ICE, right, snatched their parents, their dads, their moms, their loved ones, disappearing them. U.S. citizens in Chicago, U.S. citizens in Chicago, right, wrongly arrested and witnessing firsthand the barbarity, the cruelty. But the idea that J.D. Vance can defend those racist, right, remarks just blows my mind. Just blows my mind. It gives you a sense, not just simply the quickness in which he wants to defend the young and imply that this is an assault on this is that this is just an example of cancel culture. It reveals, at least to me, an affinity with the views. He's not outraged. He's not outraged because they hear it all the time, those off-colored jokes. And so I think it's really important for us to understand that there's an all-out assault, right, on the idea of America as a diverse nation, an all-out assault on Black people by a white nationalist administration. So we got the Chicago raids. And then, there's a story that came out early this week, late last week, around Black unemployment. And what we're seeing is that Black unemployment is rising 2 years after reaching an all-time low. It has risen from 6% to 7.5%. White unemployment slightly down to 3.7%. We saw for a period in 2023, right, when Black unemployment reached its low of about 4.8%, wages were rising. Now, post-pandemic, Black households, this was reported, Black households were the only racial groups last year in which the median income fell and the poverty rate rose. Listen to that, y'all. Black households were the only racial group that last year in which the median income fell and poverty rose. And it's happening in the blink of an eye. Just think about this now. 5 years ago, we publicly witnessed police officer killing Derek Chauvin killing George Floyd. Just 5 years ago. And we found ourselves in a racial reckoning, as it were. And we saw the country trying to grapple with its past. And just 5 years, in the blink of an eye, here we are. The only thing you can conclude about then is that folk were lying, that they weren't telling the truth, that there was a smirk behind those crocodile tears, as it were. And here we are, and a whole lot of salt, the speed in which it's happened. The only racial group whose median income has fallen, the poverty rate has risen. Black women, particularly, have taken it on the chin, 300,000 unemployed. And we think about this not only in terms of the federal government shutting down and its impact on Black workers, but Black women disproportionately represented in the profession of human resources. And we're seeing AI devastate that area. All of this, in some ways, bound up with the attack against DEI, which is having an impact on the very ways in which we re-enter the market, the job market, the labor market. So not only do you have the President of the United States using his executive power to go after Black women, Letitia James, remember, she just bought a house. Not only do you have young Republicans, people whom we've seen photographs with the Speaker of the House and other Republican leaders, these young Republicans who are in so many ways in the pipeline of leadership of the Republican Party, not only do we see young Republicans engaging in some of the ugliest, racist, anti-Semitic language in a group chat, they're being defended by the Vice President of the United States. They're being defended by, even as he says he rejects the language, he's defending them. That this is not an indication of their character by no stretch of the imagination, just off-colored humor by young folk. And then you tie that with the data around Black unemployment, the speed in which Black folk are falling off the cliff, how we are experiencing this economy, right, with its tariffs and the way in which folk are having difficulty making ends meet. Can you imagine all of those federal workers trying to pay their mortgage and send their kids to college? It's all out of assault on the Black middle class, all out of assault on the Black working poor. And those who were in the shadows are even deeper in the shadows now. Again, I have to repeat, Black households were the only racial group last year to see a decline in median income and their poverty rate rise. Now, you combine that with the fact that the Trump administration is changing its refugee policy. There's always been this attempt to undo the Immigration Act of 1965, that other major piece of legislation. There's this sense in which in 1965, we tend to focus only on the Voting Rights Act, but the Immigration Act of 1965 changed the quotas, impacted the demographics of the country. These folk want to go back to an immigration regime of the immigration regime of the 1920s. They want to go back to the Reed-Johnson Immigration Act, basically an immigration act written by the damn Ku Klux Klan. Yes, being honest, that's not hyperbole. That's what they want to go back to. And so here you have the New York Times explicitly reported, it's in the links, explicitly reporting that the Trump administration wants to change its refugee policy and tilt it towards white South Africans and white Europeans. He's acting on the shithole countries, y'all. He's acting on it. I'm listing something. Of course, we began with the corrupt, Israel and Gaza. We began with Venezuela, the bombing of the boats. We know about the corruption, the hit list. All of that is true. We know that all the trains are running at once, but there's an all-out assault on Black folk. An all-out assault on the very notion that this is a multiracial democracy. These folk are engaged in pursuing a white nationalist agenda. And to say that is not to deny all the other things that are happening. To make that explicit is not to say that it's all about race. Not everything in the United States is about race, but a hell of a lot is. And when it comes to this particular constituency, we are under assault. And just yesterday, we listened to Janae Nelson in her brilliance defend Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And we know despite her brilliance, that the court bent over backwards to hear this case, that Chief Justice Roberts will finally achieve what he set out to achieve when he was a very young lawyer during the Reagan and Rehnquist days. He's always been motivated by undoing the Voting Rights Act, y'all. I'm not making this up. You can focus on Kavanaugh, you can focus on Alito, you can say whatever you want to say about Clarence Thomas. I got a lot to say about him, but I'm not going to say it here. Chief Justice Roberts has been after the Voting Rights Act since his career began, since he started. They're going to gut it. The Voting Rights Act as we know it will be no more. I pray that I'm wrong. I pray that I'm wrong. But we need to brace and prepare ourselves for what's coming. These people believe that they can lose the country. They believe that the demographic shifts of America suggest that they cannot win in a straight up battle. So they're going to cheat. They're going to exercise the will to power. And we're seeing it in real time. Not only are they undermining the basic principles of American democracy, not only are they not only are they reconstructing the very notion of liberty. They've already done it. Liberty equals selfishness for many of these folks. But now they're putting forward a notion of ordered liberty. Well, certain constraints are necessary, kind of authoritarian justification for the limits on how you and I inhabit this space. They don't believe that they can win outright. So they're willing to throw democracy into the trash bin. And some people in the country may disagree with the basic motivation of Trumpism and MAGA Republicans, but they're afraid that they're going to lose their standing if America literally, really, genuinely lives into being a genuinely multiracial democracy. Some people are using this ugliness as a way of resetting. We've gone too far. We went too far after George Floyd's murder. I know it's happening in my profession. How universities and colleges are using all of this nonsense, to roll back initiatives that perhaps they were too quick to pursue or to implement. These folk are cheap and they know the demographic shifts are what they are. So immigration, the assault on voting rights, all of this linked. It's linked, it's tied together. This is the response to Great Replacement. This is part of a white nationalist agenda. So what have I laid out? Right? Executive authority going after Black women. Letitia James just bought a house. Right? You think about this in relation to the leadership pipeline of MAGA Republicans, engaged in a group chat, many of them, who already have influence, many of them, using language that should be disqualifying because it's an indication of character, and being defended by J.D. Vance, who's the Vice President of the United States, second in line. Then you think about that in relation to hardcore numbers, Black unemployment. Again, I keep going back to this figure. Black households last year, the only racial group, to lose ground in terms of median income, to lose ground, rising levels of poverty, y'all. Think about this in terms of changing refugee policies, Literally tilting refugee policies such that you can admit more white folk into the country because you think the browning of America is a fundamental compromise to the integrity, the cohesiveness of the country. And then the gutting, the final nail in the coffin of the Voting Rights Act. And the reason why I'm so skeptical, even though Janae Nelson was brilliant, the reason why I'm preparing myself, embracing myself, is because this has been at the heart of Justice Roberts' career. Well, here we are. Here we are. You need to understand this for what it is: greed, selfishness, and hatred. There are those who believe that America must remain a white nation. There are those who hold the view that Black people need to be put in their place. And we're seeing in real time an effort to make it so. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, I know one thing we shouldn't be doing: paying attention to Joe Budden's podcast. I know one thing we shouldn't be doing: right? It's getting caught up in all of this nonsense that really is all about the deformation of attention. If they gut the Voting Rights Act, we could see the CBC cut in half. Roland Martin has been talking about this. We're here. We're not on our way. We're here. Take a look at that Black report that I put in the link. Get a sense. Read the articles. Get a sense. This has been one hell of a week. And to see, to hear the arguments around the Voting Rights Act, to know what happened in Selma, to know what happened in Lowndes, to know what happened in Montgomery, to understand the history out of which we come, and to confront where we are now, 250 years later, and here we are dealing with this, makes me want to holler, makes me want to scream. The bitterness, the intolerable bitterness of spirit, as Baldwin said. We have to work hard to beat it back, but here we are. So I'm going to listen to a little Marvin Gaye, Inner City Blues. Open your eyes. Don't let them distract you. Don't let them distract you.